Whatever happened to the lottery picks who were supposed to be stars, but ended up as footnotes in basketball history? There's something bittersweet about watching former lottery picks bounce around the G League, trying to recapture the magic that made them top 10 selections in the first place. These were players who once had the basketball world at their feet, whose draft night celebrations were filled with promise and potential, whose rookie cards were hoarded by collectors betting on future stardom. And then reality happened: injuries, inconsistency, bad fits, or just the cruel truth that NBA talent is exponentially harder to sustain than college dominance. Kevin Knox is one of those stories, a cautionary tale wrapped in unfulfilled potential. And now he's got a new chapter beginning with the Windy City Bulls after a G League trade that's equal parts procedural necessity and genuine talent acquisition. The Chicago Bulls G League affiliate just pulled off a move that might not make national headlines, but could significantly impact their developmental roster. On Monday, Windy City swung a trade with the Golden State Warriors Santa Cruz affiliate to acquire Knox, sending a 2026 G League first-rounder in return. It's the kind of transaction that happens below the radar of most NBA fans, but for those paying attention to player development and second-chance opportunities, it's actually fascinating. Knox was the 9th overall pick in the 2018 NBA draft, selected by the New York Knicks with expectations that he'd become a cornerstone piece. 7 years later, he's 26 years old and fighting to prove he still belongs in the league that once celebrated his arrival. Before we dive into what Knox brings to Windy City, let's take a moment to understand the mechanics of this trade, because it reveals how complicated G League roster management actually is. The Chicago Bulls had already signed Knox to an NBA training camp contract, then waived him with the intention of having him end up with their G League affiliate. Simple enough, right? Not quite. Here's the complication. Santa Cruz had most recently owned Knox's G League rights from his time with the Warriors organization. In the G League, player rights are tracked and protected, meaning you can't just poach players from other teams' affiliates without compensation. Even though Knox was technically a free agent after being waived by Chicago's NBA team, his G League rights still belong to Santa Cruz. That's where this trade comes in. Windy City needed to compensate Santa Cruz to officially acquire Knox's rights, hence the 2026 G League first-round pick heading to the Warriors affiliate. It's a procedural step that most fans never think about, but it's crucial to maintaining order in the developmental league and ensuring teams are compensated when they lose talented players. This kind of transaction happens regularly in the G League, but it rarely involves former lottery picks with Knox's pedigree. That's what makes this particular deal noteworthy. It's not just about following protocol, it's about Windy City making a calculated investment in a player who still has legitimate NBA upside if everything clicks. To understand the significance of this acquisition, we need to rewind to 2018 and remember who Kevin Knox was supposed to be. Coming out of Kentucky, after just one season, Knox was viewed as a versatile forward with size, shooting ability, and the kind of scoring instincts that translate to the NBA. At 6 feet 7 inches with a 7-foot wingspan, he had the physical tools to defend multiple positions while providing offensive punch from the wing. The Knicks selected him 9th overall, ahead of players like Mikal Bridges and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a decision that looks catastrophic in hindsight, but made sense at the time based on Knox's perceived ceiling. His NBA journey since then has been a tour of disappointment and diminishing returns. After his rookie season with the Knicks, Knox bounced to the Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, Portland Trail Blazers, and Utah Jazz, never finding a consistent role or living up to his draft position. Over 320 career NBA games, he's averaged 7.3 points and 2.8 rebounds, while shooting 34% from three-point range. Those are rotation player numbers at best, role player production from someone who is supposed to be a building block. But here's where the story gets interesting. Knox is still just 26 years old. In NBA years, that's young enough that a breakout isn't impossible, just increasingly unlikely. He's at that crossroads where players either figure it out and carve out a long career as a valuable role player, or they fade into overseas leagues and eventual retirement. The next year or two will determine which path Knox takes. Last season provided a fascinating split-screen view of Knox's current reality. He appeared in 14 games with the Golden State Warriors at the NBA level, playing limited minutes and failing to make a significant impact. Those games represented the harsh truth that Knox hasn't figured out how to consistently contribute at the highest level. But then there's the other side of the story, his G League performance with Santa Cruz. Knox averaged 25.3 points and 8.8 rebounds per game in the developmental league, absolutely dominating competition and showing flashes of the scoring ability that made him a lottery pick in the first place. Those numbers aren't just good, they're elite for the G League, the kind of production that proves Knox still has legitimate basketball talent, even if he hasn't translated it to NBA success. This dichotomy is what makes Knox such an intriguing acquisition for Windy City. He's clearly too good for the G League based on his statistical dominance, but he hasn't proven he can sustain NBA-level production. That gap between G League star and NBA contributor is where developmental coaches earn their money, trying to identify what's missing and help players make that final leap. For Knox, the issues are likely mental and situational rather than physical. He has the talent, that's not in question. What he needs is confidence, consistency, and the right system that maximizes his strengths while minimizing his weaknesses. Can Windy City provide that environment? That's the gamble Chicago is making with this trade. From a pure basketball perspective, Knox gives the Windy City Bulls a legitimate go-to-scorer who can carry offensive possessions and create his own shot. In the G League, where talent levels vary dramatically and offensive systems are often simplified, having a player who can get buckets in isolation situations is incredibly valuable. Knox provides that immediately. His shooting ability, while inconsistent at the NBA level, is more than adequate for the G League. That 34% three-point percentage in the NBA translates to significantly better numbers against G League competition, and his size allows him to shoot over smaller defenders with ease. He can play multiple positions, handle the ball in transition, and provide the kind of versatile scoring that makes him a matchup nightmare for opposing coaches. Beyond the statistics, Knox brings experience that's invaluable in a developmental setting. He's played 320 NBA games, been in playoff atmospheres, and learned from coaches and teammates at the highest level. That knowledge can be passed down to younger players on the Windy City roster, helping them understand what it takes to succeed in the NBA. Knox becomes not just a player, but a mentor, someone who can share hard-earned lessons about what works and what doesn't. There's also the intangible factor of motivation. Knox knows this might be his last real chance to prove he belongs in the NBA. That desperation can be a powerful motivator, driving him to work harder, play smarter, and maximize every opportunity he gets. Players with something to prove often outperform expectations, and Knox definitely has something to prove. This trade reveals something important about how the Chicago Bulls view their G League operation. They're not just using it as a dumping ground for players who can't make the NBA roster. They're actively trying to build a competitive, talented G League team that can develop players while also winning games and creating a professional environment. Acquiring Knox for a 2026 first-round pick shows the Bulls value immediate talent over future draft position in the G League. They're betting that having Knox on the roster this season provides more value than whoever they might select with that pick 2 years from now. That's a win-now mentality applied to the developmental league, and it suggests Chicago is serious about maximizing their G League operation. This approach makes sense when you consider the broader organizational goals. The Bulls' NBA team is in a transitional phase, trying to build around younger talent while remaining competitive. Having a strong G League affiliate provides a pipeline of developed players who can be called up when injuries hit or when the NBA roster needs reinforcement. Knox might not be a long-term solution, but he could be an emergency option if Chicago needs wing depth during the season. Let's address the elephant in the room. What are the actual chances that Kevin Knox works his way back into an NBA rotation? Honestly, not great. the odds are stacked against him. And history isn't kind to former lottery picks who fall to the G League in their mid-20s. Most players in Knox's situation never make it back to meaningful NBA minutes. But not great doesn't mean impossible. The NBA has seen countless redemption stories, players who figured it out after years of struggle and carved out solid careers. Hassan Whiteside was out of the league before becoming an all-star. Jeremy Lin was sleeping on his brother's couch before Linsanity. Fred VanVleet went undrafted before becoming an NBA champion and getting a massive contract. The path exists, even if it's narrow and treacherous. For Knox, the formula is simple even if the execution is brutally difficult. Dominate the G League, earn a 10-day contract, perform well enough to get a second 10-day, then convert that into a rest-of-season deal. From there, prove you're a rotation player worth keeping around. It's a step-by-step process that requires excellence at every stage, and one bad performance can derail the entire journey. The Windy City Bulls are giving Knox the platform to start that journey. What he does with it is entirely up to him. From Windy City's perspective, this trade is a no-brainer. They're giving up a 2026 G League first-round pick, an asset with uncertain value, for a proven G League scorer who can help them win games immediately. Even if Knox never makes it back to the NBA, he'll provide entertainment value, mentorship to younger players, and a level of talent that makes Windy City more competitive. For Santa Cruz, they're getting a future asset for a player who is likely leaving anyway. Knox's NBA aspirations mean he's always going to be looking for opportunities to move up, so holding on to his rights doesn't provide long-term value. Better to trade him now and get something in return. It's a win-win transaction that makes sense for both organizations, and it gives Knox a fresh start with a new team that clearly values what he brings to the table. So here's what I'm curious about. Do you think Kevin Knox can actually make it back to the NBA, or is this just a G League career from here on out? And more broadly, what does it say about the draft process that a 9th overall pick is fighting for G League minutes 7 years later? Drop your thoughts below, because I genuinely want to hear different perspectives on this. If this deep dive into a seemingly minor trade gave you something to think about, hit that like button, and let's keep the conversation going. Sometimes the most interesting stories in basketball are the ones that don't make headlines.